Morning everyone. Today I'm going to talk to you about my journey of how I built a property portfolio of 96 properties and how I did it. You have to excuse me today if the audio is off. I'm having some tech issues with connectivity. I thought I'd have a few issues here, but we're on a Thursday today, and Thursday is where I'm going to talk about my past business experiences in the past, basically. So my past experience in property, business and investing in general. There'll be some good stories and stuff in here as well, but today I want to give you an overview of how I built my portfolio of 96 properties. Not as big as that anymore, but that's how I built it, as big as it was in its prime. So when I go back to the beginning, it all started when I graduated from university and went into a medical sales role, selling medical devices into hospitals. And very quickly I realised that I wanted to do something myself. This was the corporate life wasn't for me. So I looked at all the various get-rich-quick schemes, believing that they were all very viable and there were all loads out there that worked, which clearly isn't the case. And just tried different things. I tried investing. I'll give you my investing stories that are farcical and funny another day. But what I came down to, the fact was, I looked at the rich list, and the vast majority of people on the UK rich list had made their fortune either directly or indirectly through property. So clearly it was a good starting point. So what I did first is I went and found some education companies, and those of you that are obviously familiar with education companies in the property sector, there's some that are very good, and I'll talk to you about those a bit later, and some that are very bad and very shark-like. It's very much a Shark Tank environment, the property sector at times, and it's very easy to get burned or burnt if you're not haven't got your eye on the ball like I did in the early stages. So the first company I came across was, I think they were called Inside Track, if I remember rightly, and they used to do off-plan investment. I paid about $3,500 to go on this long weekend course. The content actually wasn't hugely bad, but it was more the fact that it was gearing up to a big sell of off-plan properties in foreign countries that may or may not ever actually complete. And obviously there was a lot of publicity around sorry, I'm just passing some people. Morning. Hello. There's a lot of publicity. Oh, got a dog. A dog trying to attack me, or running with me. I'll video the dog. It's running right by me. But yeah, so this company, had a lot of negative publicity. They took people's money and never completed the deals. But they opened my doors to, if companies were doing this for overseas properties, there must be companies that are sourcing deals for UK-based properties where you can invest with little or no money. I had about 30 grand of savings at the time to start with, and so I then found UK sourcing companies where they talked about no money down. Didn't have any idea what this was about. I mean, we're going back 14 years or so ago now, so the economy was very different. It was pre 2008 was the recession, if I remember rightly. It was pre-crash, so very buoyant market, etc. So no money down was mentioned. I couldn't believe this was possible, but I was convinced it was, and had 30 grand to invest. I found these sorts of companies that would technically buy me B&B properties, and all I'd have to do is obviously pass the mortgage criteria and pay them a sourcing fee that was around 5k a property. So my fund was enough to get me the first 6 properties. So I threw all my money into that. Had 6 properties, had no strategy. I think I had 1 in Hull, 1 in County Durham, 1 in Barrow-in-Furness, 2 in South Wales, and I think that might be it. Or I might have had 1 other that I think I got in Finch Hampstead as well. So they were every corner of the country. There's no strategy there at all. I had no agents, no nothing in place. But I was off on my journey. Each of them was supposed to be going to raise me kind of 200-300 quid a month. I think the best one was nearly 500 quid a month, clear profit. Sounds too good to be true, but it very much was. And what I very quickly learned was these sourcing companies, not all of them out there, but these guys in particular were just taking the cream of the crop that they were sourcing and just selling on the crap, basically. So when I actually got the properties and actually started to do my due diligence, obviously first mistake there, due diligence first, I realised that they had very little, bar the Finchampstead one, which has done very nicely for me, I might add, but the others are probably worth the same, if not less, than they were when I bought them some 14 or so years ago. If you believe property experts, you know, they double every 7 years. Sometimes they do double, sometimes they double quicker than that, but that's not applicable to every area of the country. And very quickly, you know, I found out 14 years, I think one of them actually gone down in value, so there's a lesson to be learned there as well. But then the next stage of my journey is I wanted to understood how they did this. So I networked, tried to find out how to kind of structure deals in a no money down fashion, and struggled to find it on my own, but then found another company that was far closer and more local to me. I mean, the first inside track was a London-based seminar, but I come across Progressive Property, these fellas in stripy shirts. It was just Rob and Mark at the time. I don't even think they had their first book out at the time, but Rob was starting to get a bit of a following on social media, even at those early stages. Social media or email, I think it was. Not God knows how I got on the list at those days, but I was on his list. Based in Peterborough, I live in Cambridge, so made sense to check him out. And I subscribed to their first, or invested in their first weekend seminar. And it was an amazing seminar, huge content, and you know, I hold Progressive Property very close to my heart in terms of, you know, the education that they've given me. And I've had very little mentorship from them. Bizarrely, Rob mentors me now, but he didn't mentor me for the first 10, 12 years of my journey with them. I used to just do the lowest level and then go and implement, and I had pretty effective results following the instruction I was given. So another lesson here is take action. Everyone says it, but it's so easy to do when you break it into little steps and do little things every day to progress. Just as easy not to do. And I talk about this methodology of breaking things down into bite-sized chunks on several occasions, but it's very true to kind of overcome procrastination. And I was nothing special, I just took action. But nextly, I actually learned the concept of no money down from Progressive. So I built a team of solicitors who were versed with this through contacts that were given to me from these training events. And away I go. All I needed to do now was find the deals. Still struggled to find the deals because I had no background in marketing or anything, but I found kind of independent one-man bands that weren't hugely keen in building portfolios themselves, but their income was purely based on sourcing, negotiating, and selling deals. And I had a couple that I come across that were okay, and the beauty of it is there was no, you know, the sourcing fee was significantly lower. I mean, we're talking, I think I was paying 500 quid to £1,000 a deal, and I also managed to set it all up myself. So, you know, there was no inflation in prices. I could do my due diligence and all that side of things, and actually knew that it was actually a real deal. So I did that process maybe 40 odd times, but in between that, I realised I couldn't do it all myself, and that's when I kind of built my relationship with my first business partner, which was somebody who was a friend, who was the partner of one of my wife's friends at university. And you know, this business partnership failed in quite a catastrophic fashion, which I'll explain in another video. But ultimately, the rule here is that we grew exponentially because we divided and conquered, and I wasn't too greedy to keep the whole pie. I shared it with somebody else. And although it ultimately didn't fail, I've had business partnerships that have been hugely successful that have ended. I've had business partnerships that have been hugely successful but then ended in a pretty bad way. And I've got successful business partnerships that I'm continuing to nurture on this day. So the next, I suppose, learning outcome is divide and conquer, but it's, you know, don't force the relationship. It's got to be a good fit. So if you find someone's got a good fit, good values, then more often than not, if you find the right person, it will exponentially grow your business. And that's what happens because we've replicated this model 40 times through a combination of sourcing ourselves, through agents, direct to vendor, and also from these independent sourcing agents, which enabled us to build a portfolio of 40 odd properties. Now I still had to put capital into it, and my portfolio wasn't performing well enough to subsidise it, so I did have to raise additional finance, and I raised it through my father, through remortgaging his house, which I took extremely seriously because he's paid it off in full. But obviously the security would be that he'd have a share in the equity, and you know, I was always taught that equity in properties is dead money. It's whether the property has your money in it or not, over the course of time, in the right areas of course, it will generally go up in value. So leverage that surplus equity, put it into additional properties that will go up in value over the course of time. So it's compounding and leveraging your funds. So that's the kind of how I sold it to my parents. Unfortunately, they invested some money with me, which enabled me to continue this journey, of which some of it I've paid back, some of it is still ongoing. But it's been a super successful partnership, working with my father in particular, who I think very highly of, and I'll talk more about his journey in the future because he's got a very entrepreneurial journey himself, which is a lot of stuff you can learn from. So that enabled me to get to like 40 odd side. Then the first, I suppose, massive obstacle approach. I mean, this was a license to put money. We were buying properties with little or no money. The portfolio was soon supporting the acquisition costs moving forwards, and yeah, it was happy days. We were just building a massive equity base. Then the first thing happened, recession hit, and then the no money down process was wiped out. And the process I was using was a third party and an option contract. And ultimately what would happen is a business partner or myself would negotiate a deal directly with the vendor, or via the agent directly to the vendor, indirectly to the vendor, should I say. And it would all be completely transparent. We weren't vultures. You know, there were people out there that would take every penny they could. We found, what did these motivated people need to move on with their lives, and give them a couple of grand in the back pocket to move on happily. And what did we need? We needed about 27% B&B to kind of make it truly no money down from our perspective. And if we could hit that box, we shook on a deal and we're happy from both sides. If we couldn't, we walked away and just left our details. And we got a number of deals over the line with people coming back to us. We never ever chipped people down, and that's something that a lot of sources do. When you're dealing with people in kind of certain circumstances, you certainly need to respect and do things in an ethical way. I've always believed in that, so that's another lesson there. Don't be a vulture and do things ethically. I'm a strong believer in karma. So, but what then happened was, you know, whoever negotiated the deal would basically put a restriction on the property, usually for 3 to 6 months, meant that couldn't be sold to anybody else but that individual for that set price. The price would be agreed. So if it's £100 property, and we agreed, I don't know, £73,000. We get an option contract agreed, register restriction, so that property couldn't go anywhere else for 3 to 6 months. Then I would then come in, or my business partner come in as the third party, and would buy it for its true market value at 100 grand. So technically we'd be raising finance on the true market value, and we'd put our deposit funds in, so we needed to have a lump sum of capital that went into the deal as a deposit. But then as part of the conveyancing process, this is all completely above board, the solicitor would raise that there's a restriction on the property. When we approached the party with the restriction, they would say, yeah, I'll remove the restriction, but it's going to cost you what the deposit was ultimately. So in that instance it would be 27 grand. So I'd put 27 grand in. Through the conveyancing, the 27 grand would go back out to my business partner, and then we'd recycle, and the mortgage funds would cover the rest of the purchase. That's how we used to do it. Can't do it anymore. I think you can with some commercial stuff, but I haven't got into that. But you know, solicitors and mortgage lenders are asking questions about the use of such creative contracts, and they just refused to do the deal if they found out any existed. But obviously we've done that 40 odd times by the time they closed the door on us. So what we then did is, once you got to that stage, and we've been doing it for a few years by this time, you then come into the realm of cyclical refinancing. And when we're talking with cyclical refinancing, this is just in the traditional sense. You know, when you've had a property for a few years, you obviously refinance onto the best rate, or you release equity. Now, a lot of the properties we were buying at the time went up quite significantly in value, so we were pulling out big chunks of equity, and we were then able to reinvest that in the traditional sense, which then got us up to kind of 60 odd properties, which we did, and it gradually increased slowly as we kept refinancing money out. How we topped up the rest, the dog's with me again. It's got a running companion, especially with this silly selfie stick. But not only did we get to 60, I was then continuing to get educated and progressive, and I was learning how to do things like lease options, instalment contracts, joint ventures, and rent to rent was just coming into the frame there. So using these various strategies, I was then able to keep the sourcing network I had. On deals that didn't work, we take on an instalment contract, which is basically an exchange with delayed completion. So it's like a lease option, but the vendor has the absolute security that you're not going to walk away because you've exchanged contracts, and the completion point is a fixed period of time in the future. And you can put sub clauses in there to extend that for a fee, etc. But it's all into the legalities of how you structure these deals. And the lease options, which was always preferred, it gave you an out if you needed it. But again, I say that in a true sense, I never had the intention of stepping out. It was always done in a very ethical way. And I think of all the lease options I've had, I think I've had maybe 7 or so. There's only been 2 that I haven't completed on, and that was predominantly due to a partnership separation, which I'll talk about in another video, but also the vendor circumstances changing and doing the right thing. So again, operate ethically. I always come back to that. Integrity and ethical dealing things in an ethical way, really, really important. So that obviously explains how I built it a bit further. I then, through going to progressive events, just started speaking about what I did, not on a stage or anything, but just and I found in MSOPI the multiple streams of property income events to be super profitable. Not profitable is the wrong sense. I'm talking in regards to not only the network you build, so profitable from that, in terms of return in time invested. So I got a huge number of contacts, and I also met my 3 of my 5 joint venture partners, which then enabled me to grow a further, I think, 15 other properties there that was by joint venture. So they put the money in, we turn it into an HMO, 50% profit share, we cover the maintenance, and after their investments were returned, the structure would be that the equity is then formally split, so it's all contractually documented, etc. So again, I'll talk to you about the strategy in more detail when we get to it, and the pros and cons of it. Sorry if the wind is super loud today, because I don't have my microphone's not functioning as it should be, so apologies for that. And then the final way that I grew the portfolio was for rent to rent. I mean, I was then building relationships with other landlords who didn't want to sell, and letting agents who were more educated property investment style letting agents. And obviously the rent to rent model, if you do it right, guaranteed rent, you've got the collateral to back it all up, couple with maintenance, it's a very extremely viable model, especially for landlords when you're cutting out letting agent fees. Very easy to close. So I had one landlord I closed, I think I ended up getting 10 or so rent to rent deals with one landlord, and then I had a couple of letting agents, and they just gave me a flow of rent to rent deals as the deals came to the market. They gave me first option because A, there was no management. I'd factor their fees and commissions into the deal. So that's how I got close to 96. But then continuing my education, I then got into the realms of service accommodation and commercial to residential conversions at the time. So, as always, taking action, we took on a block of flats in the northwest and converted that into service accommodation. It was a nightmare deal, but it was profitable from a cash flow sense. But from an equity or return, the GDP values were very, very different to what we were hoping for, and the way it was managed was pretty appalling. That was how kind of the caveat for my first business partnership separation occurring. I'll go into that in more detail in another video. But that was 9 flats there. That led to another opportunity to take a hotel on a lease option. And there was a further 15 or so rooms there that we had. So when you combine it all, it actually equated to 96 properties in total. I think the hotel factor was rooms, so we factored that as one property, but obviously the block of flats, we factored the 9 as independent units in the figures. So that's my journey, how I got to 96 properties. So I hope you found that useful and inspiring. But I suppose the lessons from this story is, I'll give you the negatives of it in a separate video, but the lessons is success leaves clues. Find people that are doing stuff, get yourself educated, but most importantly, take action, otherwise you won't get the return on your investment. And so many people will pay for education that's very good, but then won't take action, and they'll never get a return on it. So it's just chucking money down the drain. So take action is super, super important. Get educated. If you can afford a mentor, it does expedite the process, or get a business partner who could fulfill the divide and conquer process. So that's another hack, or another way of potentially doing it. But it's very, very difficult to do things on your own. You need a support infrastructure, whether that's external contractors that you outsource to, or whether that's somebody you bring in, share the business with, or whether that's people you bring in when you can afford to pay them. People are a vital cog in business, and the people that do it themselves, I don't think have a business. They're more self-employed because they are the business, and unless they're for sale, I define a business by an independent entity that operates on its own 2 feet and isn't solely reliant on any key members of personnel. It needs to be a saleable asset. Self-employed business isn't a saleable asset unless you then sell yourself and become an employee to the new buyer. So that's my journey, that's my update for today. Hope you found that useful. I'm going through the consolidation process of selling it off and reducing the level of gearing and stuff now, and I'll talk to you about that in future episodes. Hope you found it useful. Anything that you want me to elaborate on more so, just comment, and I'll make sure I include it in future episodes, and tag you in when I've answered it, so that you've got that information. And any resources and stuff that you think I can provide and offer, let me know. I'm just all about trying to give as much value and content as possibly can. So thanks a lot, and we'll speak to you tomorrow.